Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we are going to be reacting to some of you guys' hot takes on comic books. Most of these have come from like my TikTok. If you do want to be a part of the next one, I might make another one sometime soon. Go ahead and follow my socials all right here. We got my Instagram, my X, and my TikTok. Most of them will all be the same as my YouTube name. So go ahead and check those out. And let me know some of your hot takes and I might react to them. Now, the way we're going to do this is I have a notebook here with 5 of the hot takes that you guys have said. And I'm going to read one off, say if I agree or disagree, and explain why. All right? Now, let's get into it. Now, the first hot take I have is from Key that says, Wonder Woman doesn't get enough love for how much she has done for comics as a character. I agree. I want to say this one is too much of a hot take. I'm sure everybody knows how impactful and great that Wonder Woman is. A lot of people say she deserves to be on the superhero Mount Rushmore. Do I agree? There's like a couple of characters that spot can debate for. But it's definitely a great argument. I highly agree that she does not get enough love and recognition for how much she has done. We know how much she has done for the female community and superheroes as it is. We also know that there's other characters that have not as big of an impact, but has also impacted that role pretty big. Now, the second one is kind of like a dual-edged sword. This is what we would call the duality of men. We have 2 people, 12 and Ankylo. I'm sorry if I botched that. One says Batman is underrated. The other one says Batman is overrated. Now, again, this is a dual-edged sword, so can I agree or disagree here? I don't really know, but I'll give my opinion on what these say. I believe that both of these aren't necessarily wrong, right? I believe that Batman is highly played, right? Batman is everywhere. You see Batman in almost every comic pertaining with it's like some type of DC. And in recent comics, he's not everywhere, right? We have a lot of storylines without him. We have a lot of Justice League that doesn't really have him as the main part. We have the Justice League Dark that has came around, and Batman isn't too big in those series. He has some big moments, but he's not necessarily the main star in all of those series. Now, in terms of being underrated, I don't really know if I can agree with this. I think in terms of scaling, like power scaling, people I can agree with that because people have Batman under a lot of people. And that's solely because of things that they hear. Like I see a lot of things that say, oh, Batman is under Talia al Ghul and Ra's al Ghul because Ra's al Ghul trained him and all this other stuff. I don't agree with that, right? Even though Ra's al Ghul trained him, he still has beaten Ra's al Ghul on multiple occasions. And then you get like the people that do like crossover comparisons, like Batman versus Daredevil, Batman versus Spider-Man, Iron Man, things like that. And while I agree Batman does not beat Iron Man or Spider-Man, I think it is a great debate against Daredevil. And then I even seen some people talk about Batman loses to Punisher. I don't agree with that at all. Punisher is not beating Batman. In a hand-to-hand fight, random encounter, Punisher loses. Let's be real. Now, going back to the overrated argument, now I will say Batman is highly praised because of how well he works, right? He's such not a simple character, but he can be done in a bunch of different ways, right? So when you get Batman that can be pushed in different dynamics, it's going to sell because not only is it just Batman, if you have great writers that can write Batman, like Jeff Loeb right here, if you have Batman that can be changed in different ways, but it still works to be Batman, it's just always going to work, right? So even with Jeff Loeb, you have different writers like Tom Taylor Batman as well. You are going to be able to get a great story with the same character. And that's why Batman has always been able to be such a popular character. That's why he's solidified as one of the top greatest characters of all time. Now, I will say, because of this, there is a lot of times where characters that aren't or that should have a lot more spotlight isn't given the spotlight. And I think you could say the same for a lot of different heroes. Like, in my opinion, I think Booster Gold doesn't get a lot of love because he lives in the same city as Superman. So Superman overshines Booster Gold tremendously, right? And when it comes to things like the Justice League, you have characters that don't get a lot of love, even though they're solid members of the Justice League. Like, my second favorite superhero ever, Plastic Man, right? Plastic Man doesn't get a lot of love in Justice League because you have storylines that pertain mainly to Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, right? So I can understand what they're saying there. Now, the third hot take comes from Dip MP that says Punisher, Batman, and Cyclops are overrated characters. Now, again, do I agree? Some of them, yes. Some of them, maybe not so much. This is really a matter of opinion if you really think about it like that. Now let's start with Punisher. Do I think Punisher is overrated? Honestly, no. I think Punisher is quite underrated. I don't think people understand how much of an impact Punisher has on different people's different storylines, that characters that don't even pertain to him, right? So we have like Spider-Man. Even though he's going to be in a new Spider-Man movie, how many of you really knew that Punisher was a big part of Spider-Man, right? So, or Spider-Man comics specifically, like the older comics, some of the Amazing Spider-Man, some of the Ultimate Spider-Man, Punisher has been there for Spider-Man, and a lot of people don't know that, right? And then so I think that does make him a little underrated in my opinion. Overrated, I don't think so. I can't really think of many times where I've seen Punisher getting a lot of glaze. Punisher, his TV show isn't that good. I don't remember if he has any movies. I think he does, but it's like not part of the MCU and it's outdated. So I can't think of any times I've heard Punisher being praised as like a top hero. Now, I already gave my opinion on Batman, so I won't go back through that. Now, Cyclops. Do I believe Cyclops is overrated? I do think he's a little overrated in my opinion in terms of power. I haven't read too much in terms of X-Men. I'm not that huge of an X-Men fan. I'm not really that much of an X-Men fan at all. But do I believe Cyclops is overrated? Slightly. I think when the Doomsday movie got announced and they were doing like the character reveals and people were talking about Cyclops coming in and being able to like one-tap Doom and stuff if he takes off his visor, real comic book readers know that that's just not true, right? Because if you think that him just taking off his visor gives him the hand over Doctor Doom, you're in for a rude awakening. I'm not gonna lie. And you also have to weigh in the people that Doctor Doom has fought and that's way stronger than Cyclops, like King the Conqueror, Magus for a time. These people are tremendously stronger than Cyclops. Cyclops is not going to be able to take out Doctor Doom by himself. He may play a big part. I mean, when the movie comes out, we don't know yet, but he's not taking out Doctor Doom. He's not that strong. I can't really speak much on terms of like Cyclops stories and impact. I don't really know because I don't really watch or read much of X-Men's comics. So I don't know. All right. I'm not going to lie. It is nighttime now, as you can see. I had to take a break, go spend some time with my girlfriend and her family. Number 4 comes from Don. The X-Men have the strongest roster, best villains, deepest lore, and the best stories in Marvel. Now, like I said before, I'm not too well versed into X-Men. I would say, me personally, I disagree, right? With my knowledge of the X-Men, them having the strongest roster, while they do have a very great roster, I think there are other teams that may have a bit stronger of a roster in terms of just overall characters. Like the Avengers, per se. I think the Avengers has probably a stronger roster than the X-Men. If you really compare them to each other, you got on the Avengers, if we're talking about comic book Avengers, damn near everybody has been an Avenger, right? So that's really hard to compete with in terms of depth and strong characters. And even if you take just the main squeeze of the Avengers, you still have Thor, you still have Iron Man, you still have Captain America, You still have Ant-Man. That's just, these four alone are just great, phenomenal characters. And then you even have Spider-Man, which is the face of, um, Marvel right now as it is. So I feel like that's a hard argument. You would really have to go into depth. I feel like as a team, the X-Men might have a bit of an argument there. As a team, the X-Men are phenomenal, right? Like, I feel like most of the X-Men work together. They create great storylines. They create great synergies. But as individual characters, I don't think their roster goes into the top tiers, right? Because in my personal opinion, right, when you look at the X-Men, you have great characters like Wolverine, Cyclops, Magneto. But then you have, and like I said, in my opinion, you have some more lackluster characters like Nightcrawler, Jubilee. Um, I like Beast, but I don't think Beast is that, you know what I'm saying, crazy, in my opinion. I think teams with a strong roster of people that have a lot of depth as individual characters, a team like maybe like the Illuminati and teams like the Avengers and teams like that have a strong depth to individual characters and things like that. Now, in terms of best villains, I still can't really agree with that, right? They have Sinister. I mean, technically Magneto is a villain, for them. They have the Sentinels. They have some pretty hard hitting villains, but are they the best villains? I just can't see it. When you look at Avengers villains, you have people like Ultron, you have people like Thanos. You have literally Thanos. And then you look at like teams with the Fantastic Four, they have Galactus, they have Doctor Doom. You have these super hard hitting characters that literally define what it means to be a villain. And I don't think X-Men villains can come to that, right? In terms of deepest lore and best stories, again, I'm not well versed into X-Men lore like that. I know I said Deadpool. I know Wolverine has some hella deep stories, but when it comes to everybody else, I'm not familiar with their stories, so I really can't agree or disagree there. But for the most part, I think I would have to disagree with this one. Now, number 5 comes from Dion the Third. He says, Zack Snyder's Superman is better than comic book Superman. I heavily disagree. This one is an instant disagree. Zack Snyder's Superman isn't bad. In my opinion, I enjoy the Snyder films. They're not bad, right? But when you look at comic book Superman, you have this new comic book, or you have the new Superman run. Absolute phenomenal. You have Absolute Superman, the probably the best Superman or the best Absolute series out right now. You have Predator Prey Superman, where he's fighting for everything, not just his life, but he's fighting for his integrity. He's fighting for his pride. He's fighting for the world, all just to defeat Doomsday. That's it. Just to defeat Doomsday, overcoming his fear. That makes Superman, that puts Superman at a complete new level in terms of like, how do I describe it? In terms of connecting with the viewers, right? That story is inspiring. That's an inspiring story. When you look at Zack Snyder's Superman, you might think he has some cool moments and, some great feats, but are you really connecting with Superman on a personal level like that? And the Snyder films, I don't think so. Maybe the new Superman, the most recent Superman movie to come out, you might have a little bit of connection there. Me personally, I didn't really have a connection to that Superman. The movie was great, but I don't think I had a connection to that Superman like that. So I don't agree with that one. And for our last take of the video, we have number 6 from Super Gooper 36. He says, DC tries too hard. Well, I kind of summed it up a little bit. It was kind of long. DC tries too hard to make Superman in the role of Batman. In order to subside Batman and Wonder Woman, they centered an entire event around him and made him a god of creation. They want Superman to be as loved and iconic as Batman. That is a very hot take, and I personally disagree. Now, let me tell you why I disagree. I love Batman. Batman is my favorite superhero. He's a lot of people's favorite superhero. He's a great superhero. Is he the most iconic superhero? Very, very close, but no. He is number 2 to Superman. Superman is the number 1 character in the world. Statistically proven, he is the most popular, most sold, most appeared superhero of all time. So when you say that they're trying to push Superman to be as iconic to Batman, you're basically saying that they're trying to make Superman become less, right? Now, I don't like saying that as a Batman fan. I personally believe, I want to believe that Batman is miles above Superman, but it's just not true, right? And on that last point, I think Batman is actually the most appeared superhero. I think he has been in the most appearances. It's really close. But regardless, Superman is literally the face of superheroes as is, period. Now, them creating a whole event around him, that has been done many times, right? Batman has had his own plenty of events centered around him. Flash, with the Flashpoint event, literally kicked off the New 52, which is arguably the best era in DC Comics at all, period. Right? So them having a whole event centered around him, it's not really much of an argument. And then if you're talking about in terms of story, I think Superman fills his role perfectly, right? Because Batman is meant to be the strategic planner, the whole arrogant leader. Superman doesn't fill the whole arrogant leader role. He does what he has to do, and that's about it. He goes back to protecting his own. He goes back to protecting his city, his loved ones, and things of that nature. Now, has there been times where Superman has taken a mantle? Yes, there's been times. Everybody has been a leader. There's been times Wonder Woman has taken over and been a leader. There's been times Flash has even taken over and been a leader. The leader role is very universal in DC or in the Justice League. And that's why it's so loved, because they have a lot of diversity and they have a strong enough roster to where they can cycle who they want to be the leader in specific storylines. And that's one thing that DC is really great at doing when it comes to these types of things, that with their teams, even if they have weaker members and people that aren't as loved, they know how to make that person become a leader. And it just works every time. Maybe not every time, but for the most part, it works. It works. And that's all that we need. Back to the whole iconic argument. Is Superman as iconic as Batman? Superman, in my opinion, is more iconic than Batman. I personally think that Superman is most definitely more iconic than Batman. Like I said, I'm a Batman fan, so it hurts to say that. I want Batman to be the most iconic, but he's just not. Superman has has started a different trend when it comes to superheroes. He created the idealistic traditional superhero, the cape flying and stuff. When like Marvel seen Superman, they birthed things like Sentry, Ultraman, Miracle Man. There's so many characters that just wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Superman. And that's just period.